Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. 10 teams, Andy, passed on Darvin Ham before he was hired, and Darvin says those 10 teams effed up royally. Is he right?
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
For making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. It's always going to be free. It's never going to be behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with almost 20,000, getting real close to 20,000 subscribers to the Locked On Lakers YouTube channel. We appreciate everybody's support of that channel and love leaving comments and responding to the questions you ask us. So please keep that coming. And we are going to get into, I mentioned in the open, Darvin Ham's interview with Chris Haynes and Mark Stein on the This League Uncut podcast. A lot, Andy, that came out of that. But we should note that it is officially official. LeBron James, as announced at the ESPY Awards this week, is in fact going to come back and play basketball this year.
Yeah, it's funny actually. With this, it was announced, but it should be noted by LeBron James,
yes,
as he was getting an award, an ESPY for best record-breaking performance, obviously for passing Kareem, and he said from the dais after being presented, and this is pretty cool, by his wife Savannah and their 3 kids. Said, quote, "I don't care how many more points I score or what I can or cannot do on the floor. The real question for me is, can I play without cheating the game? The day I can't give everything on the floor is the day I'll be done. Lucky for you guys, that day is not today," which is, again, a roundabout way of confirming that he will be there for his 21st season, which came on the heels of him putting out Instagram pictures of every single player that the Lakers either signed or retained.
And Rich Paul saying he's really excited to come back. But he essentially not today Satan'd retirement. And, it was, I mean, look, nobody actually thought at this point he was walking away. But I think what got most of the attention was the sort of, it was very LeBron. Like, in terms of like the theatricality of it and the production of it, like this was very LeBron. You either kind of like it or you kind of giggle at it. I don't know, it doesn't bother me, but it's like, yeah, this feels very LeBron.
Well, what I think is interesting about this, because, when LeBron said this after the Western Conference Finals loss, the game 4, where he absolutely played his ass off. He played almost the entire game. It's actually, I think, going to go down as
all but 10 seconds.
Yeah, I think it's honestly going to go down as one of his most memorable performances that was not directly linked to a championship. It was pretty damn amazing.
That's fair to say. I think that is fair.
And there was a lot of people, suspecting that he was trying to shift the narrative away from people talking about the Lakers getting swept. And you and I both said in the moment that felt way too clumsy, Machiavellian of LeBron. Like it's too obvious. Like even for somebody like LeBron, who is, as I like to say, very passive aggressive, like that's too much even for him. And it's not like people forgot that they got swept. Like it's come up again since.
Yeah, I love that. That just broadly speaking, as the sort of thing that is done to distract people from the other thing that happened, is one of the least effective, like, it's at the center of every conspiracy theory. You are correct. Everyone remembers the Lakers got swept.
Well,
everyone.
I'll just say this. LeBron would need to do a hell of a lot more than float the idea of retirement to make people literally forget how the Western Conference Finals played out.
And by the way, and this is relevant to the Darvin Ham conversation we're going to have in a little bit, who really remembers that they swept the Lakers? Are the Denver Nuggets. That's something that we will talk about on today's show. But Mike Malone certainly remembers how he was never going to let anybody forget. But what I thought was interesting about this is I think it reflects two things at once. As you said, LeBron likes the theater of the moment. I think he likes
being the center of conversation. And I don't even mean this as like an egocentric criticism, even though there's some ego that goes along with this, just like there is for most people who are
Andy, were I LeBron, I have a tremendous ego, and I'm just me. Imagine if I was LeBron.
I mean, you're insufferable now.
But my point exactly.
Like a lot of people who are truly great at whatever have some ego. And then there are some people who are just built for the spotlight, and they gravitate towards it because they enjoy it. They know how much that spotlight feeds their power and their influence. And they recognize also that there are people, their fans, who enjoy them in the spotlight. But I also think, too, what LeBron said in talking about, this moment and the game 4, post-game 4 things he said was, quote, "When the season ended, I said I wasn't sure if I was going to keep playing. And I know a lot of experts told you guys what I said, but I'm here now speaking for myself. In that moment, I am asking myself if I can still play without cheating the game. Can I give everything to the game still? The truth is, I've been asking myself this question at the end of season for a couple years now. I've just never talked openly about it. And I think that is believable because it is exactly what you and I said when we did the emergency podcast. We did a post-game 4 podcast and then an emergency podcast after LeBron's post-game. If people want to go back, you can listen to us. We said the same thing. It's believable that he's thinking about this stuff, because the older he gets, the harder it is to keep doing this. And LeBron has, at this stage of his career, nothing really left to accomplish. There's nothing to do. Even if you want to win another championship, he's done it. There's nothing left.
A few times. Yeah. I think what these guys look at, somebody like LeBron doesn't want to go out a season too late. I think that's part of it, where it's just like broken down shell of LeBron, came back for the money, came back for the, because he wanted the attention, whatever it might be. And that kind of ego, like the competitive ego, I want to leave the game as LeBron James. Also too, it's hard. Like, even if you're LeBron, you have every resource, but like 21, you're going into year 21, and the mileage and the effort that it takes to still do what he does at the level that he demands that it be done is tremendous. And, you got foot surgery that he may or may not be getting. He's not going to tell us.
Until he tells us.
But he's not, or
until Dennis Schroeder tells us, whichever comes first.
But if it doesn't happen, if it's not foot surgery, it's going to be something else. Like, it is really hard to be LeBron and to fire up the engines in the offseason and want to do that. It's not easy to do. And I will say the other thing I just kind of like about it, that I think is that when I said before, it like kind of makes you giggle, is he's just kind of cheesy. Like LeBron, we talk about the sort of his style and theatricality, and sometimes he does some stuff that's really funny. A lot of his movies, have been entertaining, and it's not that he lacks a sense of humor or whatever it is, but like he's old man dad cheesy, which again I kind of appreciate, because I am 10 years give or take apart. How old is LeBron? 30?
He's going to be turning 39 this year.
Okay, so I am 7 years older than LeBron. I am 27 years or whatever older than Max Christie. So I just don't have much to identify with him with. It was a fun moment. It was cool. I liked, I appreciated the whole thing about LeBron, from the serious stuff you were talking about to the kind of eye-rolling frivolity of it. But let's talk Darvin Ham, because this interview that he gave to Haynes and Mark Stein was awesome.
Yes, it was.
So let's talk about that next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Bird Dogs, the makers of shorts and pants that feature the future of comfort, which is built-in underwear. Stitched inside the pants or shorts, it's almost like a layer of boxer brief that are at one with the clothing, and they call it Comfort Kingdom, and you can rule this land in your Bird Dogs. They make You look better. You feel great wearing your bird dogs. The stretchy fabric makes my legs, your legs, everybody's legs look great. And they are comfier than other pants and shorts because they're not made from the typically stiff, restricting cotton in most leg wear. Bird dogs fix this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks like khaki, but it stretches. And they're also versatile, the bird dogs. You can wear the same pants or shorts on a golf course, a work meeting, on a date, even in the same day. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. And when you enter a promo code LockedOnNBA, they will throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler with every order. Take a look. It is awesome. Worth it just in itself for the tumbler. So get your tumbler and get yourself some Bird Dogs.
It's often the case. We talk about players having a chip on their shoulder, like sometimes it's earned, sometimes it's kept there for, reasons that motivate players in ways that, maybe some of us don't like, Kevin Durant, taking the criticism of eggs on Twitter and turning that into something that clearly motivates him. Kobe would invent things. Michael Jordan would invent slights. All these guys do it. Darvin Ham knows all 10 teams, Andy, that passed up on him when it was time to, potentially hire him as a head coach. Mark Stein,
the ones he interviewed with.
Correct. Yeah. He interviewed with the Celtics, the Hornets, the Bulls, the Wolves, the Magic, the Kings, the Wizards, the Clippers, and as Darvin noted, the Hawks. Mark Stein says, yes, 10 teams interviewed you and did not hire you as their head coach. To which Darvin Ham said, yeah, they effed up. He didn't say effed. They effed up royally. You go back and look at those teams. How many coaching changes have we had amongst those teams? The man has a list, Andy, and he is very aware that he was passed over multiple times, and it clearly ticks him off.
Well, I mean, Darvin is one of those guys that has had to really fight and claw for his entire time in professional basketball because he was undrafted. He was somebody that carved out a 10-year career by virtue of, having obviously some size, some athleticism, some strength, all that stuff. I mean, everybody remembers him in college quite literally breaking a backboard.
Yep.
But the reality is Darvin had to get by just busting his ass, and nothing was ever stable for him. And you combine that with an upbringing that he talks about all the time in Saginaw, which was very rough, where he was shot in the face. As the old saying goes, once you're shot in the face, ain't bleep else that scares you.
It's not a saying you get to use a lot, but it's
thankfully
always true.
I'm glad. I hope it's a saying that goes the way of the dodo bird. But nonetheless, like Darvin has been prepared for a lot of fight when it comes to success, but he's also somebody that has had to summon supreme confidence because it's taken a long time and a lot of fighting for people to actually fully have that confidence in him. Like, even if they respect him, it's a different level. And, he's, whether you like Darvin as a coach, whether you don't like Darvin as a coach, there is no question the man has earned this opportunity with the Lakers. It is impossible to refute that.
And, to me, the contrast between how these comments would have been perceived among Lakers fans, because I think everything you said is 1,000% correct. How these comments would have been perceived by Lakers fans if he had done this interview in, say, February or January versus when the season was over, after he had a very strong end of the season, and I think was generally perceived to have had a strong playoffs. I think most people thought he pushed a lot of good buttons, and not everything worked perfectly. There are mistakes.
Not most people. I mean, in the YouTube section for Locked On Lakers, our page, I would say somewhere between a third to half of the comments refer to Darvin as either Darvin scam or Darvin spam,
right?
Or Darvin sham.
But in December, 85% of them referred to him as that. So I mean,
so
And when among the pundit class, Andy, at least, he was perceived to have had a good playoffs. And I think generally speaking, there was a lot more positivity around Darvin and what he did in the playoffs, the moves he made, and all that.
I agree
at the end than there was at the beginning. And I like this. I like that he has this massive chip on his shoulder. I like that he basically wants to F you every team that passed on him and look at it and said, you know what? You've hired 4 head coaches since you could have hired me. I would still be your head coach. Is he right? Is he wrong? I don't know. Most of the time coaches get fired because their team doesn't provide them with what they need to succeed. Ask Frank Vogel, who won a championship.
Coaches are ultimately, unless you're like Pop, Spo, who at the time, I guess, even them, it applies to, because when they began, they were not Pop or Spo. They were, the guy from, I don't know, the military or whatever, and the dude from the film room. Pretty much all these guys are hired to get fired, and then you're sometimes just pleasantly surprised.
Exactly. And so, I like, that's the same attitude that he brings to the team. I think that edge shows up with the team. And I don't mean like in a, everyone counts us out kind of way. We're just, the little street fighting Lakers, woe is us little engine that could. But, that kind of belief in yourself, that kind of belief in your own talent and your own ability to do the job that you've been hired to do. It's for other people to judge whether or not he's correct. But if he doesn't believe that he is the man and qualified and should have been hired a long time ago, and that each one of those teams made a mistake, then that bleeds into your coaching. And we like it when players talk that way. I'm sure there are other examples. I just can't remember a whole lot of examples of the coach kind of using that sort of, I know all 17 teams in order that passed me in the draft the year when I was drafted 18th and I thought I should have been 4th.
Well, here's the thing with Darvin, and I'll preface this by saying you and I have not been around Darvin as a head coach the way we were around him more regularly when he was an assistant with blanking right now with who was the assistant?
Wasn't he on Mike Brown's staff?
Yes, he was on Mike Brown's staff. Thank you very much. We were around that team on a daily basis, around Darvin a little bit more, had more conversations with Darvin. But the vibe that you say pretty early in his career. Yeah, absolutely. But the vibe that I still get, Darvin was impressive then. Like, he was somebody that was a great communicator. Like, if you could ask him questions and he explained things extremely well and clearly in ways that were really digestible. But the thing that I like about Darvin now, the vibe that I get from him, he may talk some bleep, and he's really confident about his ability to meet a moment, to command a room, and what he brings to the table, all that stuff. But he may talk bleep, but he doesn't strike me as a you can't tell me bleep guy. Mm-hmm. Like, he doesn't strike me as somebody that feels like he's got everything sewed up and there's not a damn thing you can tell him. Like, he talks all the time about being collaborative with his staff, being collaborative with his players, listening, like the importance of listening. Like, he talked in this interview with Mark Stein and Chris Haynes about like the ability to be honest with LeBron. And, that if LeBron misses an assignment, he'll point it out on film. And it's not about, the idea of, oh, he'll say this to LeBron like it's some type of like pissing contest. It's just the idea of people need to have an open conversation with everybody. And that includes people saying to him, there's a better way to do it. Yeah. And, Darvin has, I think, certain degrees of stubbornness or things that he falls back on in the way all coaches do. But he doesn't seem like somebody who can't be told anything. And I think that's really important. He certainly is. But I will say this, he ain't going to be told anything by Mike Malone. I am really glad, because there are 2 ways we could have gone here. And that was the thing I really wanted to talk about. There is a potential. Lakers haven't had a really good rivalry in a little while, in part because they just haven't, for a long time, they weren't good enough to have a rivalry. And it just hasn't lined up in the last few years to really, I think they might have one now. And a lot of it's going to be generated by the coaches. We'll get to it next. Locked on Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel, and you can take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet and bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you can get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. And you can bet on everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run of a game. It's all on an app that's safe, secure, really easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. I'm sure a lot of our listeners right now also follow the blue. Plenty of Dodgers options. No better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball.
Okay, we didn't get to it like Tuesday. We didn't get to it Wednesday. We've talked about Demoy Hodge, or teased the idea of talking about Demoy Hodge.
We didn't even tease who we were talking about. We just kept saying there's a potential new KCP for the Lakers. We had this on our railing, the show rundown for like 3 days.
Yeah,
they haven't said it. So let's
shrouded in mystery.
Right,
what
Demoy Hodge.
We're talking about Demoy Hodge, who took 6 of 13 from 3-point range in Wednesday's Summer League game. He's now shooting 41% in Vegas from 3 on 9 3-pointers a game, so pretty good volume there. Intrigue and putting up a lot of good defensive tape, and we'll try to get into him a little bit more detail as a two-way player, certainly before the end of the summer league or going into the summer. But an intriguing guy, and what we loved about him and what we found kind of fascinating is who, when asked, he said he patterned his game after, and it was Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And you certainly can see a lot of it. KCP has become a very good shooter. Wasn't always that way when he started, but has become that way, seen as a very versatile and aggressive defender. And mostly what I think is incredibly self-aware from Hodge, who's 24, not one of these little baby rookie types or whatever. He's got to get where he's going in a hurry. Is he understands the path to becoming an NBA player when you're an undrafted 24-year-old two-way player. And that is to pick a role guy, pick a glue type player and emulate that guy, as opposed to Kevin Durant or, I'm going to be like Kobe or that's not.
No, you're not.
Where you're going to go. No, you're not. But, put KCP up there as your target. That can get you into the league and keep you there if you can shoot the ball well enough and if you can play that kind of defense.
Well, and also too, and I think this is really savvy of Hodge as well. If you end up like a KCP in the league, a high-end role player, you can make a bleep ton of money. Like, frankly, you can make a bleep ton of money, a nice living as a low-end journeyman role player as well.
If you play NBA basketball for 5 years, by any normal human being's definition of wealth, you have attained real lasting wealth. Maybe not generational, but you play in the league for 5 years, you probably have made $10 million or close to it.
Well, as an example, I just looked this up thinking about it. Like Troy Daniels, who was on the Lakers for most of the 2020 season before he requested a trade because he wasn't playing. 7 teams in 7 seasons. Doesn't get much more journeyman than that. Made over $14 million in his career before turning 30.
Yep.
Which gives you a lot of options moving forward, whether you want to stay in basketball.
Your 40s can be a lot of things when you've made $14 million before
right.
you're 30.
But then KCP, he's already made, in terms of what's been banked and what's guaranteed to him as a high-end role player, already $100 million. And assuming he doesn't get hurt, because KCP just turned 30, he's got another contract coming. It's a smart thing for Hodge to do.
I just don't. I suspect he's not thinking of it in those terms, but I think the payout, your point about what the potential payout is there, is true. Like if you can achieve that, you don't have to pattern yourself after a star to get in the league and make money that way. But if you got to get in the league, and if he's not going to get it, that's the path. That's the guy. You have to find a niche as a G League guy, as an undrafted player. You're never going to be in the league as a star. Those guys already are there. You have to find your role. And he is clearly somebody who understands not just what the path is in terms of I got to shoot, I got to play defense, but like who are the avatars here that I ought to be looking at?
He is smart to look at somebody like KCP as, okay, this is the peak that I should shoot for.
So Lakers fans have been, I don't know, annoyed. What's the is a nice way of putting it, by how focused on beating the Lakers the Denver Nuggets have been since through the parade and after the parade and all this stuff. And Michael Malone is as salty a human being as you can find. Like, chip on his shoulder. Like, my first reaction when I heard, sort of Darvin's comments in part was like, damn, I bet Mike Malone knows exactly like every interview that he never got. Like, these guys have a lot in common in that way. So Darvin was, they were talking about Mike Malone's championship performance. LeBron, I think, mentioned it on Instagram and all that stuff. And Darvin, when mentioning that, he said, "Oh wow, you're going to bring up Money Mike, man, the Lakers' daddy. That's what they call him now, the Lakers' daddy." Haynes says, "I'm sure you can. I guess you can talk it when you win a championship." Ham said, "God bless his soul. This bleep ain't over. God bless his soul." Andy, we have a rivalry, and it's actually being fueled by coaches. I mean, I'm
trying to think.
I love this.
The coaches off the top of my head that I can think of that feuded naturally is going to be through a Laker-centric perspective, because that's the team I paid attention to the most. Phil Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy did not like each other. And then Phil Jackson and Mike D'Antoni had a lot of back and forth between each other in the mid-2000s. The Lakers and Suns met twice in those playoffs. I remember that back and forth. But it's not often that you hear coaches go back and forth like that. I mean, usually there's a fraternity. They're pretty much all represented by the same guy. But this is great. I know we had a lot of fun making fun of Malone during the playoffs, but I liked and understood what he was doing and why. Like, this notion of, because while, was it overblown? Was he looking, again, sort of Jordan-esque, any slight for his team? But there was enough truth, I think, to what he was talking about and how his team was covered and what people say about Nikola Jokic and all these other things, for him to credibly go back to his team in this moment where you are trying to gin up every possible edge. This is not the time for like calm, rational, like, guys, it's overstated. Like, let's not no, you lean into all this stuff because you're trying to wring every ounce of motivation that you can out of your group. And this is just who the guy is. And he's a red ass, man. Mike Malone he's been a red ass his whole career.
Really good coach, and his players dig him.
Great coach.
In part of that, like, I think these players love him for a lot of the same reasons that Darvin's players seem to. I want the Lakers need a rivalry. Now that they at least are good again for the next couple seasons, we hope, or whatever it is. Like, I want a real good, like, grudge match type setup here, and that it seems like it could come, because there wasn't a lot of that on the floor. I didn't think it wasn't like a particularly super angry, chippy series like the Clippers versus the Memphis like a few years ago, where like it was, wow, these people hate each other. But all the stuff that they did after they beat the Lakers turned this into, like, I think, a legit rivalry, and I think it's gonna be a lot of fun next year.
Absolutely. I very much look forward to it. I'm sure Mike Malone reminded them many times, this is the team that took you guys out in the bubble, even though other than LeBron and AD, it was none of them.
Right.
Not even the same coach.
Right, exactly. But remember, never forget. So, all right, the other thing he talked about was Austin Reeves. We can save that for Monday and his potential status as a future All-Star. And I do want to talk a little bit more about Hodge, because these guys are all really intriguing. We didn't ever got to the over under on wins, how the division's shaping up. The Pacific Division looks like it's going to be a monster next season. So lots to look forward to next week. We'll get to all of it. Thanks for checking out Locked On Lakers on YouTube, joining and subscribing that channel. Everyone have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.